Welcome to episode number 3 of the Blender Noob Show. If you're just checking us out, here's the deal. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with this particular show. And I think you may notice my hair is going crazy. My 6-year-old daughter was just putting bows in my hair before the episode, and I did not have time to remove them. We had a pretty serious game of Uno going on with the family right before this adventure. Okay, so so before we get started, this is a weekly a Blender show, I guess. The Blender Noob. It's an evolving process. It's a growing. We planted the seed. Now it's becoming this Blender tree. It's like speed tree, and it's going to become something. So this is just November 20th. Is that today? Yesterday. So yesterday, some news came out that Facebook became a corporate patron of Blender. Mike, what does this mean?
It means more money for Blender. It means more development time, more developers. One of the things that they kind of equated within this article is it's going to be $120,000 a month.
A year, right?
A year. So $120,000 a year, which essentially will mean around 2 extra developers per year in terms of what that money could get them. It's awesome because it's a part of the domino effect that's happening with Blender. Facebook is huge. That money could obviously grow. They already have AMD, they have NVIDIA, they have Unity, they have other big patrons now that are putting money in Blender, and what that's going to mean is continuing in creating tools that are going to help game and VFX pipelines and things that are even beyond that. So it's just a continuing trend that people are getting behind Blender as a amazing product that it is, and it's exciting.
That is really cool. 2 developers over the course of a year is huge. That's massive. Even bug fixing alone is huge, and I think there's a lot of details in this article that I didn't know. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll post the article below. But I didn't know that Epic had given so much money. So what was it, like $1.2 million? Yeah, So Unreal had given that's probably a one-time donation of $1.2 million.
Yes,
which is massive. So they've got some. Big. So they've got some serious patrons. So what this means in my mind's eye is that they're creating a foundation for accessibility to 3D, right?
Yes.
So these are all companies that require 3D assets heavily in their products, and so they're making it more accessible for the general public to be able to afford to be creative and create this stuff. That's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, I mean, they're even creating free augmented reality tools to where you can share it on Facebook and Instagram. They're bridging that gap between accessibility, which has always been difficult, and Blender's kind of been in that space for a long time. But before 2.8, it's been difficult for most people to get into that 3D space, whereas other Max, Maya, and other has been in there for a while. But now with 2.8 and above, Blender's made that breakthrough experience where freelancers, people like me who just want to learn another tool, you don't want to be tied down with multiple $1,000 softwares. This is just making it, like you said, super accessible for a lot of people. So a lot more talent's going to get into the industry. A lot more people are going to be interested in 3D in general. It's all just good news.
Yeah. So just paying attention to the chat. Red Yoshi just asked if they may call me Gabriel. Yes, you may. Checkpoint Professor, Gabriel, whatever you want to call me is great. Mike, on that note, no, I think what's cool about Blender, and I'm not gonna lie, this little thing we're doing every week is really good, because honestly, I don't want to learn Blender. I know that's contradictory to the noob thing, but that was part of the problem with that fire hydrant. Is I'm like, I could knock this out in 30 minutes in Maya, or spend 2 weeks trying to bang my head against Blender.
So last time we showed the hydrant. It was not too dissimilar, but there were some things that I had still yet to do. None of this text was here, so I started putting in some text, and my intention actually is to bring this thing into ZBrush and do some blending, because the hydrant that I'm modeling after, it's not, you know, they're kind of blended together, but that we can do in ZBrush. I remodeled this situation right here. This is now one piece instead of two pieces. I added in all this text, which I think would be kind of interesting to show. I have a whole text workflow that I've used for putting things on the hydrant. Then I also built this wire wrap rope situation. So I think what I'm going to ask you, Gabe, is what would you like to see first? Do you want to see how I did this wire rope, or do you want to kind of look at like how we do text and bending it to our will in Blender?
Okay, I want to see both, but I think let's ask the chat. Which one should we see first? I'm very impressed with the wire. My guess is you use some kind of twist modifier, but I'm very interested to see how you did this.
Totally. Well, let's start with the wire rope, because that's actually one of the more, it's kind of complicated. But the first thing is I used a reference piece of geometry. Nope, that's not it. Which is this right here. So this is actually a spline, which is really cool and very easy to use within Blender. So let's create another spline just to show you how that is. So Shift A, and then we go to curve, and then I started with just a path, and that gets you this line.
Oh, so it gives you a pre-built spline to use.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah, so this is the spline, and if you hit tab, you can get to the actual curves.
Controls.
So what's cool is that, yeah, so these are the controls, and you can see essentially it's a soft selection. So this is your manipulators, but then here's the actual spline right here. And so what's pretty cool is you can do some of the same things that you would do with modeling, where like in Blender, the shortcut to extrude something is E. Well, the same thing applies to your spline. So if you want to increase the spline, you just hit E.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so we'll
So you could even just start increasing one side and then just delete the other section.
Yeah,
of it.
totally. So that's really cool. And then what you can do, so there's your spline, and then you can go to your physics. No, not physics, but there's the object data properties, and this little button here changes depending on what you're using. So currently it's a little spline. If you use text, you'll see like a little A. But you open this up, and we have here all of these controls, very similar to what you would see in like Max or Maya. So you can look at depth. Yep. So here we go. We can.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I started out with a basic spline and got my shape. I used that. I got the shape. Let's actually look at the wireframe of this. The resolution.
Now is that is that polygons or is that NURBS at this point?
Currently it's NURBS.
Okay.
But you can right click and...
I'm gonna put you on the spot, Mike. Do you remember what the acronym for NURBS is?
No, I forget. It's just, I mean, it's math. It's just, it's just math.
Here it is, and it makes perfect sense if you say it out. Non-rational uniform B splines.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Yep.
That's engineer speak for you right there. Pwaz, thanks for stopping by, my friend.
Yeah, there's lots that you can do with these, but what I did was I used this as a reference for the path for the geometry that I'm going to be using. So you can change all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
so this is great for tubing, but what's really, really, really cool. So let's leave this here, and we're going to leave that here. I'm going to hit tab. Okay, so we have, let's say that we have our spline. This is the cording. This is the path that we want our wire mesh. So now let's make the mesh. So we're going to do Shift A again. I'm going to go to mesh. I'm going to go to circle. So at this point, let's just isolate the circle. I'm going to hit There we go. Okay, so the wire rope is 3 circles that are then twisted. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit Shift Tab, go into snap mode, which is just up here. Shift Tab is a shortcut. And I'm going to essentially just make 3, Shift D is to duplicate. Okay, so far so good, right? This is the top section of a wire rope. 3 things twisted together. I'm going to join them, Control J, join, and then I'm going to do Control Alt X to get to my origin menu, the pie menu. I'm going to do origin to geometry. It's not quite great, but actually this would be a good time to, I'm going to do Shift right click to get my 3D cursor there, and then I'm going to do Control Alt X, origin to cursor, and then I'm going to do, I'm just going to move this to the center. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, with me so far. Okay, so now we have these 3 circles. We're going to make it into the wire rope, and there's a really easy modifier to do this. You can do this modifier for all splines. It's the screw modifier. Perfect.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, it looks like some crazy stuff there, but what we're going to do is expand it.
Nice.
So currently the default is 360 degrees. We're going to get it up there like that. So let's just do 25. So now we have this twisted situation. You can twist it more, twist it less. With the iterations, you can essentially just do steps. See that? 2 iterations.
Okay. And so
3 iterations.
So that'll keep it tiling.
Yep. We'll just do a simple screw situation. What you could do, steps and viewport. There we go. Let's just do 32.
Oh. So Baxter 900 said there's an add-on for Blender that shows all the hotkeys you press as you press them.
Yes, a lot of Blender YouTubers, or actually just 3D YouTubers, have that, so you can follow along. You can kind of just pause the video and be like, what did they press? We should
do that add-on this week. Baxter, if you wouldn't mind sharing the link to that, that would be amazing.
Cool. So we have this. Now what we can do, let's just do one more iteration. We'll do 2 more iterations. Okay, perfect. We have this. Let's apply it. We have this sweet piece of geo. One thing I'm going to show you right now, okay, which is really cool, is Blender's soft selection hotkey situation. Sometimes I needed to move these things to once it was in the spline that I wanted, but I wanted just to move things slightly around. What you can do is hit O, which is also this proportional editing object mode, and that's really cool. And so what you do is you hit tab, which is to get to your vertices, and let's say that I just needed to make a move. I'm going to hit G, which is move, but then I'm going to do Shift S and then cursor to select. Okay. Sometimes you need the cursor over and then G.
Do you mind if I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
So these are polygons at this point, right?
Yeah. This is
just
polygons.
And this is just extremely high poly. I'd assume for games, though, you'd make a cage around it later, but... Yes.
Yeah. Which is what I plan on doing for the rope. So what I did was I made my reference spline, and then I am going to attach this to the reference spline, but then I'm going to convert that reference spline to polys and use it as my cage to do the bake. So it all works out. So I hit O to get to the proportional editing, and you can click on a vertice, and once you hit G, you'll see this big circle, and that is your your circle of influence, and you can scroll up bigger or smaller, and you can get some really cool effects. If you only wanted to do one of those, you can actually just do you can select connected only, and that will actually differentiate between what's actually a part of one single mesh. So that's cool. And then I actually ended up using. But in any case, we have this, and now we're going to attach it. So let's get out of here. It's humongous, but we want this and we want this. I'm going to scale it down. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to attach this new corkscrew wire rope to this. But before I do that, because I've scaled something and I'm going to attach it to something else, I'm going to reset the transforms. And so I'm just going to hit Control A, apply all, and that's going to reset the transforms. Okay, next, let's attach it. So modifier, this modifier does not generate geometry, it just deforms geometry. So you can go to curve, and then the curve object. There's two ways to select it. If you have multiple curves in the scene, you can select them with this little drop down. I have two of them.
Oh, that's cool.
The one that I used before, nerves path, perfect. And then you can change the deform axis. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. All right, so remember this little shortcut, and that's N, that brings up your transform menu. You definitely want that on here, because now we can use the transform menu to move it into place and to do some cool deformation. So I'm gonna use the location, get it right on the spline, or at least where I want it. Remember, holding shift will get you, here we go, sweet. So now it's in the middle, and now Z is gonna,
So when you did this for yours, did you have to create enough geometry that you had enough to do it, or is there a way to add on?
there's a couple things you can do to that.
So that's your stretching it, right?
Yeah, I'm stretching it. So what I did was I built enough, and then I stretched it a little bit, and it was fine enough to totally work.
Yeah, I think with that much, as long as yours is a little bit, 10% stretch isn't
Yes.
even going to be discernible. So.
Yeah, and that's why you do want to try and create enough. That's why you can do multiple the iteration steps that I showed. You can make sure to do enough, wrap it around, and then you can just delete what you don't need once you get in there and then cap it. So this was a lot of fun. So I moved it into place using the X, Y, and Z. I got it to a point where I liked it, and then I used the scaling of Z, and there you go. Now you have that cool piece of geometry that's wrapped around that curve. And so, this is good for rope, this is good for wire rope.
Barbed wire, yeah, so much stuff.
Barbed wire.
It's good for piping, a lot of stuff, right? So it's incredibly useful. This is like one of the, whether it's Blender or Maya, is one of the tools that you can really add a lot of detail to your models with.
Yes. So that is the method that I use to get the wire rope, this stuff right here.
That is rad, dude. That's rad.
Cool. All right, let's want to delete that with X. See if we have anything. No. Okay, so now text. Well, so do you think we should do text now, or maybe text will be pretty quick?
So honestly, I think with this episode we have probably about 10-15 minutes left. So I think.
Oh, okay.
So I think So if we kept it to like 2 or 3 major like learning lessons, I think that would be great. Yeah. But I'm open to discussion on that.
Text will be quick. I can show text very quickly.
Okay.
It's actually a lot easier. So text has three major steps that I did with this text, and you can see that when we isolate this text, it's bent. It looks nice. It's gonna be good for sculpting later. If I go to wireframe though, it's decimated, which is cool. There's a decimation function within Blender.
Oh, Blender does the decimation. Okay.
Yeah. So, which is what I wanted to do, because what I needed to do was create the text, and then I needed to make it very high poly to deform it so it didn't have much deformation, and then I needed to then decimate, because I didn't want like 1 million polygons in my scene. Yep. So there's the 3 major steps. So let's do some text real quick, and then we'll do some deforming.
And so anyone that's new to 3D modeling, decimation is, I don't know if ZBrush introduced it, but it was common in ZBrush where things would be millions of polygons. And decimating it basically destroys your pretty geometry and makes your model unusable, but creates almost the exact same detail in your model in much less polygons. So it's great for video games and baking. But like he was saying, it's so many little triangles that if you had a job of like cleaning that up, it's near impossible.
Totally. So what my plan is to bring in this decimated mesh into ZBrush, probably make it into a Dynamesh and merge it with a very high poly version of this, and then sculpt some of the transforming geometry, decimate the entire fire hydrant, bring it in, and then build a low poly on top of it to then bake those details. that's the workflow that we're kind of going for. But for now, this helps me place that text how I want it.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's build some text. It's very easy. Shift A, boom, text. And it's there. Oh, there we go. Boom, text. Okay, like the spline, it has object properties, and then that symbol changed to an A. And now we have text properties. So what we're going to do is we're going to first make it centered, so you can have your alignment. This is very similar to any other text program that you've used, except for it's in 3D. Let's change the font by going to your font panel. Currently it's regular. If you choose this little folder icon, you can just look at all the fonts that are on your system. Let's do something kind of fat so that it can be deformed well, like Comic Sans. Nope, not doing that.
Do it.
No. Sure. Okay, let's we'll do Comic Sans. Comic. Oh, you know what? This right here is good.
So I want to make sure I'm giving some call outs to the chat. Baxter900 says again, Blender has a lot of ZBrush features built into it with its sculpt tools as well. That's nowhere near as built out as ZBrush, but it's still very serviceable for a lot of the things you do in ZBrush.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And they're in a bit of Blender sculpting news, they have one of the next big releases will have the memory allocation for their sculpting side of things is going to be much better, because currently within Blender it's hard to get really dense models because of the lag in performance, and they are really trying to address that. So it's more in line with being able to really service high poly models that you can then sculpt and then do some like HD geometry type situation.
And so they've had like that capability, maybe not ZBrush level, but that's been there for like 10 or 15 years. So I can only imagine it's getting pretty evolved. Yeah,
it's great. And a lot of people are just sticking with Blender just to have the entire pipeline within one package.
So I'm not going to ask you today, but that's one thing so since it covers the modeling, the traditional modeling, the high poly sculpting, I'd be curious later for a later discussion, we can put a pin in it, how you would get away with not having like a substance designer at this point.
Yeah, I think we will probably go through the entire pipeline within Blender where it comes to, because texturing is really great. We can do rendering with cycles or Eevee, and then we'll go into some sculpting and then some like retopology. I'm not sure how well it bakes within Blender, but we can give that a shot. We'll do the entire thing within Blender.
That's sure. Awesome! I'm excited.
Okay, so let's add some geometry to this text. We have the we have the extrude. Let's just actually quickly look at the wireframe. Okay, super sweet. We'll do some extruding. Boom. Okay, let's do some beveling. Sweet. Looks like it's maybe we want to have the spacing a little bit more. Fantastic. And actually, what if we want to change the text to something like checkpoint professor?
A fine choice.
So all I did there is I hit tab. Tab gets you into text mode. And so now I'm going to do Control A, and I'm going to do word spacing. I guess not word spacing, line spacing. There we go. Checkpoint, professor, hit tab again. Oh my Belusia, here we go. Nice. Okay. Now, let's, I'm not sure what happened here.
Oh, the P. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
Oh, buddy's nerfed.
Oh, this must be the actual font.
It's the font, or something. So, yeah, I'm not going to pretend to know why, but something may have been with the modifiers that you've adjusted or not, or having a little bit of difficulty translating it.
Okay.
Awesome.
We're going to do that. But so now we want to deform it. So let's do this. We're going to convert this to polys. Actually, before we do that, I do want to change the words. Perfect. Okay, let's look at the geometry. Okay, so we have this sweet geometry, but we want to deform it around something. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to need to convert this to. We're going to convert this to polygons, and all you got to do is convert to mesh. Right-click, convert to mesh. Love it. Okay, so now it's polygons. So currently, if you were to deform this, what we're going to use is the simple deformer. So that's the modifier, deform, simple deform. I'm going to go to bend. We're going to do shift S. Oh, this is at view. We're going to go to local, shift S to get to the cursor. Cursor to. Origin to geometry. Okay, we're going to make this bigger.
Do it.
Yeah, something to do with that. And then we're going to do select apply all, modifier. Perfect. Okay. So we're getting a weird deformation. We want to bend it. Something to do with.
Is it the origin?
Well, the origin is origin to geometry. That is local. And then shift S. I want to do cursor to selected. Okay, let's just see it. And then I'm going to do control A. Apply all. Okay. Okay. Simple deform. Still doing crazy stuff. Point individual origins. Okay. That's the. That is. This is 3D in real time.
That's right.
What? Oh, it's fun to do the same thing. But in any case, you can bend it. Selection. Okay, oh yeah, okay, so the origin is there. Oh boy, okay. If this happens again, and then we're gonna. Oh.
It's gonna work this time. Maybe.
I think it will.
Yes.
There we go. All
Success. Right. Success is had.
Man, sometimes you just gotta you just gotta work through it, everyone.
Yeah, it looked like it was offsetting the bend point.
Yeah. So in any case, let's look at. This is actually pretty good. This is working out pretty good. Sometimes there's going to be some shear points because of how the geometry is drawn. So you'll see these like big long shear points. But let's go through the process of remeshing this and then doing the deformation and then doing the decimation to get it ready to line things up. Okay,
let's do this. So are you going to stick this onto your hydrant to showcase that? Is that?
We're just going to deform it, and we can just assume that you're deforming it to whatever you want to deform it to.
Great.
So the first thing we're going to do is let's look at the geometry, and you can see that there's big long areas where if you're trying to deform it on a certain axis, there's only so many polygons that it can do that with. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a modifier, and we're going to go to remesh, and it's going to do a pretty good job the first time. But what we're going to do is voxel, and you can already see that it's actually trying already to remesh it with grids, which is really fantastic. See the actual quads.
So that's not bad already.
No, and I'm just going to do 0.05 just to get it to where it looks closer to what it did. Okay, that's pretty fantastic. That's going to deform really well. We're going to apply it, and then we're going to do back to the simple deform, and we're going to do a bend, and we're going to go back to Z, and then we're just going to really bend it. And yes, we're going to get some deformation, but it's going to be a lot better than it was before. And so now that you have this, we can lighten up the scene by applying it and then going to decimate. And this is a really easy modifier because currently we're at 100%, and then you just do the percent that you want. So if you want to bring it down to 25%, you just hit 0.25, and it's going to decimate. Depending on how many polygons it has, it might take a little bit, and then it's decimated. Look, boom. You can see that it's much lighter, and you can go as far as you want to. But at this point, you have a deformed mesh
Yeah, you woke her up.
Hit apply.
Hi, how was your nap? Yeah, good morning.
And there you go. You have some deformed text that
Nice.
will work in your scene.
Oh.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that was my workflow for deforming text around the fire hydrant. Checkpoint town, smiling. That's what we did.
It's a dirty old town.
It's the checkpoint town grin.
That's awesome. No, this has been huge. This has been really good.
Yeah, and so that's what I've been. That's been the main. Oh, this is probably why there's so many. Look how crazy yours is now.
So Molbacher asked, can you deform the text like you did with the cable? I'd imagine you could stretch it right on a curve, no problem.
Oh yeah, you can do all that stuff.
So that's so when I saw your initial text on your fire hydrant, I assumed that you projected the text onto the mesh and then extruded it out. But no, but you used a deformer and rounded it out to the right shape around it, right?
Right, which was different than what I did when I originally built the insert. Because remember, when I built the inserts, I used the shrink wrap modifier to have the projected circle to the cylinder, and then I built from there. When you could do it that way, but you would need to not do any extruding within the text itself.
Right.
So you would, that kind of, you would need to bevel and extrude the text like after it became a mesh, because when you shrink wrap it, with the extrusion, it smashes into itself, and it doesn't quite work out.
Yeah,
like
so
you'd expect.
Yeah, I think the way you did it is the smart way. I prefer that way. So that's awesome. So what are you going to be tackling this week?
So this week I'm going to finish the text. I was actually doing this bit of text right before we did the call. I have one more bit of text to do here, and then at that point I have a few other things to tackle, and then I was going to use a plugin called Go B, like if you've used GoZ, it's the plugin that goes from Blender to ZBrush. So it's a workflow enhancer, and I was going to bring this into ZBrush. I was going to do some sculpting, do some just bang it up a little bit. I was going to do some sculpting on this situation. There's this plate that has some really cool sculpting that was done to it. I'm going to sculpt all the text. Sculpt meaning I'm going to blend it into the body, and then I was going to decimate it inside of ZBrush and bring it into Blender to then use this mesh that I have here to create the low poly cage, which
Very cool.
I'll probably finish the high poly before we talk next. Once the high poly is finished, then maybe we can talk about remeshing and bringing this into a full game asset. And then maybe what we could do is do some UV work within Blender. That'd be good. That
is fantastic. I'm super excited, and hopefully next week I will have, because I'm taking more of a bite-sized approach, I'll actually have a project to show, as Mike has been carrying the weight of the Blender Noob show so far.
Yeah, and maybe next week, depending on what you learned, you can share whatever you learned about Blender and whatever you wanted to go over.
Awesome. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think this format, I'm enjoying this format, so I think I'm going to keep it up. If anyone watching or seeing this on YouTube enjoys the format or has any questions, or if there's anything particular that you'd like to see or any questions you have, feel free to ask them in the comments, and we will do our best to answer. We are just noobs figuring this out as well, so thanks for joining us in this process, in this journey of Blender education. And we'll be back on Saturday on our Twitch channels, as well as continuing to post these up on YouTube.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Baxter and Molbacher, for hanging out in the chats. Hope to see you guys again soon.
Yeah, it was great catching up with Molbacher. For those of you who don't know, we graduated with that gentleman. It's good to see him after a decade of craziness.
Yeah. All right, Mike. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, buddy.